We are recording. You can start us off.
All right, we're supposed to leave 5 minutes or 5 seconds.
Right.
Remember?
Yeah.
So we're probably good now.
Okay.
All right. So, hi guys, and welcome back to episode number 5 of the Barbell Lifestyle Podcast. Today we are going to be tackling reverse dieting and maintenance. So, just a little bit of housekeeping and some personal updates. So the last time we spoke, I was going to continue on with my 2020 prep. But after talking with Marissa and after talking with my coach, I have decided to end my season. And I am now in a reverse dieting phase, which is perfect because Marissa is also in a reverse diet from her little mini cut. So I don't know if we want to talk about that real quick and then kind of go into what a reverse diet is. Maybe that's a term that you've never heard before, how to reverse diet, what you can expect from doing a reverse diet, just kind of what goes into maintaining and how long you should maintain before you cut again. So that's kind of the overview of today's episode. So Marissa, maybe you want to talk about your mini cut, how that went, and now what you're experiencing.
Yeah, absolutely. So as for my mini cut, I went on a 3-week mini cut journey. So it's definitely nothing like yours, Christina. I think you were dieting for better part of the entire year.
It's a year.
Yeah. So this was 3 weeks of just cutting calories pretty drastically, added in some cardio towards the end, and dropped about 7 pounds over the course of those 3 weeks just to tighten things back up and feel better overall to continue on with growing. So as for my reverse, and we'll kind of get into definitions, mine is probably going to be less gradual and drawn out than Christina's will be because I jumped down in calories really quickly, and we're jumping up pretty quickly. I would say probably by this time next week, I'll be back to my maintenance calories.
Maybe what we should tackle just real briefly is the point of doing a mini cut or the point of doing something very rapidly compared to a gradual approach that I have. So maybe kind of go into that just real briefly.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, your goals make a big difference in what you're actually trying to accomplish. So for me, my main goal right now is to put on as much muscle as possible for the next 2.5 years, probably. So for me, it's just keeping things in a manageable place so that I'm not gaining excess fat or feeling unconfident in my physique as I am eating and training to build muscle. So with that, the mini cut's purpose was just to lose a little bit of body fat to get me in a more comfortable place. And the reason why I wanted to do it rapidly was because I didn't want to take away time from growing. And so if my goals were different, if my goals were to do a long cut or to step on stage, I would invest more time into the cutting phase, but I just really didn't want to waste any time growing. So that was really the purpose of it versus a diet for, say summertime or a wedding or an event or a contest. That's going to be different because you want to take it slow and steady, because if you are getting a lot leaner, that's going to put your muscle mass and your lean mass at more risk for being lost if you take it too aggressively. Does that kind of do what you were thinking, Justice?
Yeah, no, that was perfect. Because right now your main goal is building. So if you take time away to diet and to diet for a prolonged period of time, like you mentioned, you're going to cut into the muscle mass, which is not what you want to do right now. So I think you said it perfectly.
Yeah. So with that, I think we should get into the definition of a reverse diet before we get too into the weeds, because there's probably a good number of people listening who've never heard of this word before. And there's a lot of misconceptions that come along with it just because of the name. So a reverse diet is essentially the time frame from your calorie deficit, the end of your calorie deficit, your diet, to a maintenance level of calories. So it is the time frame from when you stop dieting to when you get back to your maintenance calories. Now, some people don't do a reverse diet, and what they do is they will end their diet and they'll jump right back to maintenance calories. Can you do this? Absolutely, but that comes with some physical and mental repercussions. For example, if you were to do that big jump altogether, let's say you ended your diet at 1,500 calories and your maintenance is 2,500 calories, making that big of a jump might allow you to gain a little bit more body fat in a shorter period of time. It might just be overwhelming to go from that many calories, adding 1,000 calories to your day, in a day's time span. That can be a big adjustment to make mentally, and it might not be something that you're equipped for, whether that's mentally or physically. So the purpose and the reason why reverse dieting is a thing is it's essentially reversing your calories from their lowest point back up to where they need to be for you to maintain your weight in a slow and steady, gradual manner. Do you have anything to add there?
No, I think that was perfect. So basically, I mean, to put it very simply, a reverse diet is doing the reverse of your diet. So you just gradually reduced your food intake and increased your cardio. So reverse diet is doing the opposite of that. So you're now going to slowly increase your food and slowly decrease your cardio. So this is something that we've touched on in previous episodes. But I mean, that's kind of the general idea of a reverse diet, is to build your metabolism back up and get you into a good spot post diet.
Yeah, and there's a good number of misconceptions that come along with reverse dieting. So the first one is because of the name. I've had a lot of clients just exhibit apprehension towards starting a reverse diet, towards ending their diet, because they hear the word reverse and they say, okay, well, that means do the opposite. So that means I just lost the weight and that means I have to gain the weight back, right? And it's important to make the distinction that the term reverse applies to calories that you are eating, not your weight. So the goal is not to just undo all of the progress that you have just made. That would make no sense. And why would we as coaches be advocates for this, right? Because our goal is to help you be healthier and maintain weight loss over the long term.
Right. So
go ahead.
So that's basically, everyone talks about how the problem people have is dieting or weight loss, but that's not the true issue. Like, a lot of people know how to lose weight. They know how to get down to where they need to be, but the problem is being able to keep that weight off. So a lot of people normally, when they start a diet and they end their diet, they don't really know what to do, where to go. So they'll either just revert back to their old tendencies and they eat how they were normally eating before the diet. And your metabolism is, depending on how long you dieted for, probably is in a lowered or a fragile state. So if you have a very low metabolism and you rapidly increase your food intake, you're setting yourself up for rapid fat gain. And that's not what we want to do. So in order to build your metabolism back up, we need to slowly increase your calorie intake. So that is the point, is we want to be able to keep the fat off, but still set yourself up to be in a very good spot to maintain. So that's the idea of reverse dieting, is to be able to maintain a lower weight, but maybe at a higher food intake.
Yeah, and then the other problem with the industry and diet culture as well is a lot of people view a healthier lifestyle, and I'm doing air quotes if you're not watching on YouTube, as dieting. And they see it as, I'm either in this calorie deficit, I'm either eating 1,500 calories per day or 1,200 calories per day, or I'm completely off track. And most people that I come across and that I work with don't understand that you should actually be spending most of your time at a relatively high calorie intake day to day. And the dieting phase is just the entry point for most people.
Right.
You're supposed to cut down on calories, lose the weight, but when you finish your diet, you're not supposed to try to sustain that perpetually. That is not what sustainability is. So when you end your diet, acknowledge that you can raise your calories and not gain that weight back if you do it in a proper way. And the other thing about that is, you think, okay, well, if I'm going to reverse my calories up, then I'm going to be able to eat all of the things that I was missing out on during my diet. That is true to an extent, but we can't, and we'll get into this with the expectations with reverse dieting, but it's important to acknowledge that this is still a lifestyle change, no matter where your calories are at, right? So you're still going to be filling your diet with mostly nutrient-dense food sources. You're still going to be prioritizing a high protein intake. So reverse dieting does not mean reversing habits. It means keeping the same habits, but increasing calorie intake. And that's where the maintenance and the sustainability in this is.
Yeah, no, I love what you said. So I think the other thing that you really, an important thing that you hit on was a lot of people spend too much time in a dieting phase and not enough time in a maintenance or a surplus phase. And that's what sets you up to have a better diet in the first place. So people place too high importance on the dieting phase and not enough on the building or getting your metabolism up to a good spot. That's why reverse dieting is such an important topic and something that we think is, I mean, it's great information for you to have as someone who is concerned about, how they look or, wanting to just live a healthy lifestyle. And unfortunately, a lot of clients that Marissa and I get are ones that are eating very, very, very low calories or doing a high amount of cardio. And they come to us wanting to lose fat and wanting to diet, but we can't put them in a position to diet because they're already way too low or their output is way too high. So we have to do a reverse diet. That's, I would say ethically, morally, that's the only way you should go is up. And a lot of people don't want to hear that. They don't want to hear that they need to eat more. They don't want to hear that they need to do less. But sometimes that is actually what they need to do. And I guess we'll kind of go into expectations in a little bit. But this is kind of diving into our next topic, but is when's the right time to start a reverse diet? So if you are eating very, very low calories, if you're hungry all the time, if you have just crazy amount of cardio that you're doing, that's a good indication that it's time to start reverse dieting. And especially if you've been in a very long dieting phase, that eventually you do need to come out of that phase and start eating more.
Yeah. And one thing that I would like to add on to that becomes a problem for a lot of people who do identify with the, diet culture is a healthy lifestyle, which is not the case, is that if someone does try to sustain that 1,200 or 1,500 calorie diet as their quote unquote lifestyle, then what happens when they have, a weekend off or, they start to fall off track? And so then it becomes the whole cycle of restrict on the weekdays and go way overboard on the weekend, which then basically just digs someone into the rabbit hole of they are now unhappy with their weight and the way that they look and the body fat that they've gained, but they still feel like they're being adherent because they're restricting on the weekdays and they don't understand why that's happening. But for what reverse dieting does, increasing your daily calorie intake across the entire week not only puts you in a better spot metabolically, but it's feeding you every single day so that you're not craving something so much that you want to binge on it by Friday night or Saturday. And so you're able to practice moderation 7 days per week instead of feeling the need to gorge yourself every so often. And it promotes better consistency overall. So to kind of go into that point with when is the right time to reverse diet, like you mentioned, definitely the people that have been chronically eating low calories, or if you're that type of person who restricts on the weekdays and you go overboard on the weekends, because I think everyone has seen those infographics where it's like a bar graph of your calories through the week, right? Like Monday through Friday, super low, Saturday, Sunday through the roof, and then your average calorie intake for the week is higher. So if you look at that and you say, well, if I increase my daily calorie intake on the weekdays, then my total intake for the week is just going to be higher and I'm just going to gain weight. And we can't look at it that way, because the psychology of actually being fed properly makes a huge difference in how you're able to moderate yourself on those weekends.
And also your perception of your eating habits. And so if you're feeling guilty after meals, that's another good indication that, you know, something needs a change.
Yeah. So that's one category of when it is the right time to reverse diet. And then in general, you know, at the end of any dieting phase, it's the right way to transition back to maintenance. So kind of getting into that, do you want to talk about the end of your contest prep and how that transition is looking for you so far?
Yeah, the other thing I wanted to mention is talking about those chronic dieters. Again, I think that people who are constantly dieting, they are scared to change their habits and they're scared to try anything different. And so they're more likely to stay in that chronic dieting state, which again, like we mentioned, is not sustainable. And I feel like you hear a lot of times people who talk about, you know, oh, I look at carbs and I gain fat, or I feel like I eat normal, like a normal person, but I gain fat a lot quicker than most people, or I gain weight a lot quicker than most people. And then they go back into the cycle of, well, I need to diet harder. I'm just not doing things right. Or, you know, I just need to cut out sugar, carbs, fat, whatever, you know, insert whatever it is. So I feel like if that is something that you relate to, or you're like, hey, I feel like I'm kind of like that, then it might be a good idea to maybe try a reverse diet. So if you're not happy with how things are currently going, it is scary to try something new, but I would say that that's a good indication that it's time to start a reverse diet. But as far as my own, so like Marissa had mentioned, I have been dieting for almost a full year. So I started with my coach in actually December 1st, and we did something similar to what Marissa and her coach did, was a rapid fat loss phase. Probably not, mine was a lot more extreme than hers. So I went very, very, very low calories right off the bat. And so there has been some research by Dr. Bill Campbell, and he's been doing some research on rapid fat loss phase. So the idea is to go through an extreme bout of dieting for maybe a week or 2 weeks. And the reason it's only for that short period of time, it's because what you're doing is not something that you can sustain for months on end. And the idea is to be able to rapidly lose weight, rapidly lose fat, to get you in a better position to kind of start your diet and without eating into any of your muscle. So that is what we did for the first 2 weeks of December. And I think I went from about 136, 135 to about 130. So I saw about 5 pounds lost in 2 weeks. And then I went back up to my dieting macros, which we kind of went into for the rest of December. And then of course there was Christmas, and then there was New Year's, which we spent in Virginia together with Kristen for Kristen's wedding, which was super exciting. And then I flew back. And so I started my prep at about 1:30ish. It probably could have been a little bit better had I not had all the holidays and the traveling. So I pretty much started January 1st after the rapid fat loss phase. And so I've been dieting up until November 13th. So that was show day. And I had plans of continuing to prep and diet, but after talking with, again, like I mentioned, my coach and Marissa, we just didn't think that it would be worth it to continue dieting for the next, 3 weeks and try to push for USAs. And so I decided to end prep and start the reverse dieting phase. So I wanted to get my calories back up, start putting on some more muscle mass. And, reverse dieting is hard. I would argue that it's actually harder than the dieting phase itself, because there's a lot more kind of mental battles that go into it. And you're also now like really fighting your your hunger cues. So when you're dieting, your is it ghrelin? I don't know how to pronounce it correctly.
Ghrelin and leptin.
Yes, they're all kind of out of whack. So ghrelin's a lot higher, which is your hunger hormone. And so that is signaling to your brain that, hey, I'm hungry. And so you're like, okay, well, I should eat. And I feel like too, especially when you start increasing your food, sometimes it also increases your hunger, and you have a tendency to want to keep eating. So reverse dieting is hard because, the dieting phase isn't over. You're still probably having to do quite a bit of cardio, and you're still not eating quite as much as you would like to. So it's trying to find that balance of being less strict with yourself, but also still having willpower of saying, well, I can have a cookie, but I probably shouldn't have 2 or 3. Maybe in a month or 2, I'll be able to get to that point, but I still need to be pretty strict with my calorie intake so I continue to not put on fat as quickly as your body would like to, because, that's what it wants to do, is wants to store fat, because it's from the what's the right word that I'm looking for? Oh, I thought you were going to help me out there.
I don't know what word you're looking for.
Okay. Just from like but I don't know, biological standpoint, your body wants to preserve body fat. So that's where I'm in right now. I've been about 2.5 weeks post show. And I am about maybe 1.5 pounds up. But I will say that I did kind of fluctuate a little bit. And I was probably up maybe 4 pounds at one point. And again, it was not with my own scale. It was with my mom's. And now that I'm back at my own house with my own scale, it was anywhere from up about 1 to 3 pounds. So I'm back down to that 1.5, and I feel really good. And although I would like my food to be a lot higher, I'm still very happy with where my intake is right now. So I'm about 2.5 weeks into my reverse diet so far. So I have Marissa here to keep me accountable, which is really helpful, and I'm here to help her as well. We've actually been sending each other screenshots of our macro breakdown and, kind of our thought process and how we've handled situations like going out to eat or, being away on vacation with our family, which is something that we both just experienced. I was with my mom in Florida, and Marissa was in Newport News with Aaron's family, her boyfriend. So it's nice to have that support system and that accountability factor. And that's something that I would absolutely recommend if you're in a reverse dieting phase, because it can be really tough.
Yeah, and to add on to that too, it's not just your hunger hormone that's higher, it's your satiety hormone that's lower and constantly suppressed. So leptin is the hormone that signals to your body that you're full. And unfortunately, when you have just exited a prolonged dieting period, it takes a longer amount of time than just, increasing your calories the next day to have that hormone be back to normal. Hormones are just very complicated things, and they take longer to get back to quote unquote homeostasis. So your leptin might be suppressed for months following your contest prep or months following your long diet. And it might take a while for them to upregulate back to their normal levels to where you're actually feeling full when you should feel full. But if it's underregulated, sometimes during a reverse diet, when we're increasing our calories and we're eating, and our ghrelin, our hunger hormone is super high and our satiety hormone is super low, we might finish a meal and still be hungry, but we're going to have to stop, because that's just the nature of increasing your calories at a slow pace. And so I kind of wanted to briefly discuss how to actually reverse diet, because I think it's very important that we give some application to you guys as the listeners to what that actually looks like and what to expect with it. So to briefly break it down, reverse dieting, it's pretty simple. So if you're tracking your calories or your macros, then you'll know where your calories are for your deficit and whatever helped you achieve your weight loss. And you're not necessarily, you might not know what your actual maintenance calories are unless you were tracking them at maintenance prior to your diet. If you were, that's great because you have a ballpark of where you should be aiming. But if you don't, then it's just going to take more data collection on your end. So what you're going to want to do is, the first thing I would say is step up your carbs and your fats by a good handful, by a couple hundred calories. So let's say you were eating, for example's sake, let's say you were eating 1,200 calories at the end of your very long diet phase. I would say the first jump should honestly be to 15 or 1,600 calories, because there is no sense in just prolonging an even longer deficit. And I really try to be very intentional about making the point that every step along the way in a reverse diet is still technically a deficit until you are maintaining your weight and at a high enough intake where that is your actual maintenance. And so when you're thinking about that, every step along the way is still a deficit. We want to get you out of a deficit as soon as possible in a way that's gradual and manageable mentally and physically. So typically how I like to do it is, the first jump in a reverse diet is the largest, just to get you in a place where you can be more flexible. And this is, like Christina said, one of the most challenging things, because now you're like, oh my God, I can fit this X, Y, and Z into my numbers now. I can fit this treat that I haven't been able to have in months into my diet again. And that's where it becomes very hard to still practice moderation with yourself, but it is a really crucial time frame to be able to do so. So what I would say is the first jump should be at least a couple hundred calories. This, of course, depends on your body size, your gender, but in general, like, let's say you were eating 1,500 calories, I would say bump it up to 1,800 or 1,900. If you were eating 1,200 calories, let's bump it up to at minimum 1,400, 1,500. Get a couple hundred calories in there from carbs and fats alone. And then from there, if you're tracking your macros, then you're going to want to gradually step up your carbs and your fats by 5 to 10 grams at a time. On a week-to-week basis, and just monitor your weight. So if you're taking your daily weigh-ins, then you can take the weekly average, compare that to the previous week's average, and if it has either stayed the same or gone down, then you can continue increasing your calories. And as long as your weight week to week is holding steady, you can continue to increase calories. And there is no ceiling or point at which you should feel like you can't if your weight is still holding. The ultimate endpoint of a reverse diet is just whenever you either see your weight start to climb, or you can't handle the amount of food that you're eating and you just want to stop increasing. It's gonna be one of those two things. Usually it's the former, but I have run into people that run into the latter, which I feel super jealous about. But that's kind of, in a nutshell, how to break it down. And it does require data collection and analysis, objective analysis on your end as a client.
Yeah, and this can be why having a coach can make things a lot easier, because they're the one who's able to look at all the data, analyze it, and then make a decision based off of the vital feedback and how your pictures are looking. And we're able to look at it in a more objective lens. And sometimes it can be really difficult as a client to know what to do, or if you're unsure, and I feel like sometimes people are hesitant to increase their calories, or maybe they don't know what they should manipulate this week. I like to get some feedback from the client. So for example, maybe they're really craving like rice, or they're really craving bread, or they're really craving pasta. One week I might just only increase carbs and leave fat where it is. Or if they're really, craving eggs and butter and bacon, or, salmon, I might only increase fat that week. So I'm trying to adapt from what they're telling me and try to make the reverse dieting process a lot easier for them and make it more likely that they're going to hit their target macros. Personally, I like to increase carbs before I increase fat. That is just typically what I like to do coming out of reverse diet for most clients. I feel like getting carbs up a little bit helps with leptin and bringing leptin back down. So I've seen a lot of success. I've seen a lot of success with my clients utilizing that strategy.
Yeah. And the other two things that I want to add on to that is you can increase protein if satiety is really something that you are struggling with. So, we use the 1 gram per pound of body weight rule for protein. If you aren't already familiar with this, you should be aiming for roughly 1 gram per pound of your body weight or your lean body mass in protein per day to support muscle gains and lean body mass retention when you are dieting. But if you want to go above that, there has been research to show that up to twice your body weight in grams of protein is still proven to be safe and perfectly fine. And protein, macro per macro, is the most satiating macronutrient. So per unit of volume or per calorie unit, you're going to get the most satiety, meaning it's going to keep you fuller for longer. So if it really is a problem that you are not staying full, sometimes I will increase a client's protein. And then the other thing I did want to touch on, because
right before it, just since we're talking about protein, I would say that increasing protein in a reverse dieting or a building phase is probably the best time to go about increasing your protein. Because when you're dieting and even reverse dieting, your protein probably shouldn't change a lot. When you're reverse dieting, the things that we're going to manipulate most are fats and carbs. But if you are in the reverse dieting phase and you're in that muscle building phase, I would say that that's a good time to increase your protein. But also, like Marissa said, to help with satiety and making sure that you're feeling full during that phase.
Yeah. And we kind of only touched on diet, so I did want to touch on cardio as well and how I tend to approach that with clients too. So typically when you end a diet, you might be adding cardio on to your workouts to help with energy expenditure, as you should, because you can only take from so much of your diet, right? You want to make sure you're having enough calories to at least perform in the gym while you are losing body fat. So maybe we add on cardio to increase that deficit without touching your food. Now, when it comes to reducing cardio, I will tend to do that closer to the beginning. So depending on how much cardio someone's doing, if it's a client in contest prep, I'm probably cutting their cardio in half out the gate, first week of their reverse diet, just because it just takes a lot of time out of your life. And so if you really are doing that much cardio, that's the first thing that I will do. And I actually had a client who was a lifestyle client, but she came to me running 9 miles per day, 7 days per week. And the first thing I did was reduce the duration and the frequency. I think we went down to like 4 times per week of like 6 miles, which is still like so much running, but I basically tried to cut it as close to in half as I could. And then from there, more gradual steps. So for that example, going from 4 times to 4 times in 4 miles, and then 3 times of 4 miles, and just continuing to reduce that gradually week to week. But again, same thing, calories going up and cardio coming down. The first adjustment is always the largest, because giving your body that kind of shock of like, oh, I'm going to be fed now, I'm going to get to rest now, does have like a really good anecdotal effect that I don't think we have proven in research, but that's where it really comes down to reverse dieting being a little bit of an art form, because there's really nothing to back up this initial jump being like this magical thing that starts to help you feel better and maybe even drop some weight from just like stress retention at the end of a diet, because at the end of the diet your body just might be stressed out from handling so much. So a lot of times what we do see is the first couple steps of a reverse diet can kind of finish off your fat loss phase for you. We often see that if you have been dieting for a prolonged period of time, that first increase in calories and that first decrease in cardio just skyrockets your natural energy levels, and maybe we do see 1 or 2 more pounds come off before we start to see weight maintenance. But that part really is just a little bit of an art form where we make a big jump at the beginning, and sometimes the magic happens.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely experienced a little bit of that post show. So coach, again, since we weren't sure what we were going to do, we decided to do a diet break. So I immediately went to almost double the amount of carbs I was having, and he cut my cardio in half. So I was kind of like, okay, are you sure? But I mean, that's what we did. And I feel like that was the best I had ever looked when I was in the gym, the most pumps I'd ever had. I was feeling super vascular. My energy was high. I just felt good all around. And I feel like part of that was because I was holding on to less inflammation. I was holding on to less water. So I did see that reduction in inflammation, and I felt like I looked like crispier, maybe is the word I'm looking for. But again, it's probably a little bit more intense if you are coming out of a contest prep, because you are at very, very low levels of body fat and a very low weight. So you may not be able to see that extreme change, but you would probably see a big mental change as well. So paying attention to how you feel mentally, how your body is feeling, I think those are things to pay attention to as well.
Yeah, and I noticed that at the end of my diet earlier this year. So I think it was a 12 or 13 week cutting phase earlier, I think from January to April. And I noticed that as well. And I think it's important to recognize that if you are pushing a diet really hard, and if you are digging for fat loss, whether you're a contest prep athlete or you're just a general population client trying to get as lean as possible, honestly, I noticed that at the end of my diet, I was sluggish, I was dragging, I was tired, and everything just felt a little bit harder than it needed to be. Mm-hmm. And as soon as we made that initial jump up with calories, that was when I started to see the final bits of progress that I wanted to see in that dieting phase. I got the last 2 pounds off with the first calorie increase and cardio decrease. Mm-hmm. Is that going to happen for everyone? No, but a lot of times if your morale is able to change that much from a small increase in calories like that, like a couple hundred, like I said, all the steps in a reverse diet until you reach maintenance are still a deficit. Mm-hmm. So the potential for weight loss is still there. But I think we'll get into how this doesn't always happen and how we shouldn't expect reverse dieting to be a solution for weight loss, but it does happen for a good amount of people who are truly pushing a diet by the end of their cutting phase.
Yeah, so that's a really good transition into our next topic, which is the expectations with reverse dieting. And so the first thing that I would go into is reverse dieting is not a weight loss strategy. So the point of increasing your food and decreasing your cardio is to, again, get your metabolism in a better spot. And typically when you increase food and decrease cardio, you're going to see weight gain. You're going to see the scale go up, and there are hyper responders and there are people who lose weight when you start to do that. And it might be kind of like what we were talking about before, that their body was in a chronically stressed phase for a prolonged period of time. So when you do increase the food and you decrease the cardio, they respond very, very well. I had a client, and I think I've talked about her before, where she was under eating and way overexerting herself in the gym. She was a workhorse. And I told her, I said, you're not eating enough. So my suggestion is that we start this reverse dieting phase. She fought me in the beginning. It took me probably 2 weeks before we got her into a spot where she was okay with increasing her food. She wasn't self-sabotaging herself. And every week she lost weight. Every single week we got her up to almost 2,000 calories before she started to start increasing her weight. But she's kind of an anomaly. That doesn't normally happen for most people. And I think what happens is a lot of coaches use reverse dieting as a marketing tactic, and they kind of like to show off their hyper responders, and they like to show people, and I get where they're coming from, and I think it's good because it does show people like, hey, reverse dieting and increasing your food isn't necessarily a bad thing. That you can see some really great benefits from it. But people now have a misconception that, hey, if I start to reverse diet, I'm going to lose body weight and I'm going to lose fat. So I think that that is an expectation to have, is that is generally not the case for everyone. And I think that's really important, because I will have some clients who are in a reverse dieting phase and they are gaining weight and they feel like they're doing something wrong, because they're like, well, why am I not losing weight? But it's not necessary. You are not necessarily going to respond that way every single time.
Yeah, and I think that's super powerful. Like, acknowledging that the marketing tactic of using, hey, reverse diet, lose weight, that is something that is a double-edged sword, right? Because we are looking at it from, okay, well, this is spreading the message that eating more calories is good and more people are going to want to do it. But then it's also setting up people for the expectation to lose weight on something that is not a method of weight loss. It is a method of transitioning out of weight loss and into maintenance. And so kind of looking at, why some people might lose weight and why others might not. We kind of already touched on this, but dieting is a stressor, right? And so if you are intentionally or unintentionally under eating, you're adding stress to your body. And so if you do this for a prolonged period of time, a lot of things become suppressed. Your metabolic rate, your hormonal fluctuations. Sometimes women will lose their periods, and our bodies essentially learn to compensate for the low calories that we're eating to not shrivel up into nothing. We have to conserve that energy to maintain our weight. And usually what happens when we're under eating is our bodies try to fight to hold on to our body fat, because that's a survival mechanism that usually people want to, back in the day when we were hunter-gatherers, keeping body fat was an advantageous thing. So if you're in that suppressed state for a while and you're not seeing the progress that you want because your body is starving and it is holding on to your body fat, this is the hole that a lot of women dig themselves into, is under eating and not seeing any of the progress that they want to have. So when we start to gradually increase calories, maybe they go from eating 1,000 calories per day to 1,500. Again, they're still in a deficit. So what happens? They're going to lose weight because they now feel better eating 500 calories more. So they're able to actually have a productive work output in the gym and throughout the day, but they're still in a deficit. So yes, that person is going to lose weight as they reverse diet until they get to their maintenance. But is that the outcome we're looking for? No, the outcome we're looking for is getting their calories to a sustainable spot where they can actually live a healthy lifestyle and maintain it, and then focus on weight loss later. And then someone who might not lose weight in a reverse diet, and maybe they weren't in such an extreme place to begin with, but maybe they did a little bit of a dieting phase. They decided, hey, this isn't worth it anymore, or I think I'm done dieting. I lost a couple of pounds that I wanted to. And they start to increase their calories, and, they store glycogen and water with that. And, maybe their weight shoots up a little bit with the first increase. And that's okay. That's something that, also happens. And when you eat more, your body is going to, so for example, if you increase your carbohydrate intake, your body is going to store some of those carbohydrates in the muscle as glycogen. What happens when you store glycogen? You also store water with it. That's not bad water weight, but it is something that happens when you increase your carbohydrate intake. So that could be another reason why we might see scale maintenance or even an increase on the scale when you are reverse dieting. So
Mm-hmm.
there's a lot of factors that go into it. So it's not just, hey, put more calories in and start losing weight. It's a lot more complex than that. And it's important to know that when you are actually at your maintenance calories, you're going to experience weight maintenance.
Mm-hmm. And the other thing that I was just thinking about when you're talking about why some people do lose weight is when your body down regulates because of the energy it's not getting from food and the output from all the activity levels. Sometimes what happens is when you increase the food intake, your energy levels naturally increase. So maybe your body starts to kind of upregulate. So you have more of that, the NEAT that we've talked about before, the non-exercise activity thermogenesis. So maybe you're just not as sluggish. And so you feel like, getting up from the couch and moving around, maybe you start to do more chores around the house. Maybe you're, I'm guilty of this sometimes, sitting in my office. I'll call people on the phone instead of getting up and walking over to their office or walking over, or, instead of sending an email. So that might happen kind of unconsciously, and it's not something that you're aware of, but maybe you start to actually have a higher output than what you did before when you're in a dieting phase. So sometimes that happens too, and it's not something that you are aware of, and so you think that, oh, I'm just losing weight right now. So sometimes that's something that can happen when you're reverse dieting.
Yeah, and that's also super variable between individuals, because some people just might have more of a tendency to be sluggish and sit around no matter what their calorie intake is. Or there might be some people who just work a really active job day to day, so they're always on their feet no matter what. So that's going to play a really big role into it. So when we're looking at reverse dieting and how you're going to respond to it, acknowledge that there's so many factors that
Mm-hmm.
we can't just put a blanket statement on and say, well, usually what happens is you lose weight for a couple weeks and then you maintain, because we just, you have to just try it and see what happens, and know that ultimately the outcome is a sustainable higher calorie intake for you. And no matter what happens, you're getting to that better spot at the end.
Mm-hmm.
So I guess we can transition into how reverse dieting transitions into maintenance,
Mm-hmm.
and what that looks like, and how you're done reverse dieting. So I guess the first thing that I would say is, it is a pretty seamless transition. So when you reverse diet, you're raising your calories and you're monitoring your weight, whether you're doing that or a coach is doing that for you. But you're at maintenance when your weight just maintains. And like I said, you're done when either your weight starts to trend upwards and you don't want it to, so you keep your calories steady, or you cannot handle the amount of food that you're eating, even though your weight is holding steady. Therefore, you stop increasing your intake. It's one of those two things, but that's going to be the end point. But Christina, why don't you go into a little bit more of like the subjective signs of how you'd be able to tell when that is?
So my thing is what you just touched on. So you have a client who is feeling really comfortable with where they're at. So maybe they get to a weight where they feel really good. They feel like they have very good energy. They don't feel like they're hungry all the time. They're not food focused. That might be a very, very good indicator that let's just cap it here. And sometimes the amount of food is relative to that client and that individual. So there are some people who can eat, 200 grams of carbs a day, 50, 60 grams of fat, and they feel great. They're not hungry all the time. They're not food focused. And you might have other clients where that's like dieting macros for them. And they might need to get up to 300, 400, maybe even 500 grams of carbs. Typically, we don't see a lot of women that get up that high, but there are some. So that's why the biofeedback from clients is very, very important for us to analyze and to be very honest with your coach, so we can make sure that we're interpreting everything correctly and making sure that you just feel really good both mentally and physically. So I think the other thing is sometimes we see a lot of women who are fixated on like the 200 or the 300 gram carb club, and they feel like they're a failure if they don't eat 300 or 400 grams of carbs a day. But it might just be that your body can't handle that amount of food. I feel like I'm actually kind of someone who can't get that high as of right now. Maybe from past dieting mistakes that might be part of the reason, but I think that I'd be one of those people who would struggle very hard to eat that amount of food intake. So if you are getting to that point where your weight is still holding steady and you're feeling maybe a little bit uncomfortable at the amount of food that you're eating, maybe take a look at what type of food sources you're having. So if you're still eating a whole bag of cauliflower rice, and your stomach hurts and you're feeling really full all the time, well, maybe it's a good time to switch to actual rice. So trying to bring the volume of your food down a little bit so you can handle a higher intake. So one of the good things that you can do is maybe look towards like protein shakes, or maybe smoothies where you can sneak in, like honey, or you can sneak in some higher calorie foods that aren't going to leave you just feeling gross and bloated and like you're just full all the time and you're feeling heavy and sluggish. So it might be an indicator that you might just need to change some food sources, but it's all just strategies and making sure that you're talking with your coach so your coach can help you implement some different things, and maybe even get you to a higher intake than you thought that you could eat before. But also, signs are, how's your sleep? Are you sleeping really well throughout the night? Are you able to recover? How is your performance in the gym? How is your mood? So it's not just the hunger aspect. While that is very, very important, that's not the only indicator that we're looking at. And also just how is your quality of life? That's something that is extremely important. So if you still feel like you're not able to go out and enjoy meals, or you feel like you're still doing a lot of cardio, and you feel like it's not something that you're still able to maintain long term, then maybe we continue to reverse diet. So there's just a lot of factors to consider and to analyze, and it will vary client to client. So it's kind of drawn out.
I love that point about clients trying to fill a higher calorie intake with, say, quote unquote, diet foods.
Mm-hmm.
And I run into this all the time. I have clients eating, upwards of 30, 40 grams of fiber per day. And I have their carb target at 200 or more than that. And they're like, well, I'm so full, like I can't hit my target, or I just feel like crap when I do. And I say, okay, well, send me a screenshot of your day. And they're eating like 3 bags of cauliflower rice per day, and they're putting all of their meals on a big bed of lettuce. And this kind of plays into what we talked about at the beginning, as where people kind of see dieting as a healthy lifestyle, but that's not the case. You don't have to eat salads just because you're being quote unquote healthy. You can have pasta, you can have rice, you can fit in a candy bar every now and again. And especially if that's going to help you to actually digest things better and not feel backed up all the time. So I love that point. And that doesn't necessarily go in with like the biofeedback, but just like being able to actually reverse diet your calories up to where they need to be. That is such an important point. So changing your food sources in the opposite direction. So, you're not getting rid of, for example, the rule of threes, like putting together a meal with a carb source, protein source, and a vegetable. But maybe instead of just skipping out on the starchy carb source altogether and only using vegetables, maybe now you add in that rice or that potato that you weren't able to have when you were dieting. And maybe you decrease the portion of vegetables that you're having just because they're too filling. And so when you diet, you're making all these changes to increase the volume of your food to feel fuller. But again, dieting by nature is unsustainable. And we're doing that to reach a goal, a short-term goal. But long-term, once you get into that reverse diet and the maintenance phase, your calories are higher. and you're no longer going to need to eat 3 big salads per day to feel
Mm-hmm.
full. And so that's an important transition to make, is knowing that you have to match your food sources to the context that you're in.
Right. And that's not to say, okay, well, now I'm done dieting, so therefore I don't need to eat any fruits or vegetables. That they are still extremely important, and you should still hit your target micronutrient goals and still make sure that you're still getting quality food sources in. But just simple switches, kind of like you were saying before. Well, if you're feeling full, then you probably don't need to eat everything on a bag of lettuce, or you can switch from cauliflower rice to actual rice, but still making sure that you're getting in leafy greens, you're still getting in good sources of vitamin C. But you can also, so maybe instead of eating 200 grams of strawberries, you can now eat, 4 ounces of sweet potato, and you're still going to get that same amount of vitamin C and vitamin A. So just small little things like that. So you can probably actually increase the amount of food you eat from just little subtle changes like that. And the other thing too, just to point out something that I was thinking earlier, is while protein we talked about before is very satiating, making sure that you're spacing that out evenly throughout the day so you're feeling full from meal to meal. I feel that sometimes women have a tendency, and not just women, but actually people in general, have a more carb heavy meal for breakfast, and then maybe something for, maybe they have a little bit of protein at lunch, but generally dinner is when a lot of people have a higher protein meal. And so if you're spacing things out throughout the day, that can help a lot too. If you're feeling very hungry at the beginning of your diet, but just small little tweaks that you can make when you are in that reverse dieting phase to help set you up for success.
Yeah, and I have 2 more things to add on this, because I think we're getting into some really good points here. So when we're talking about, signs that you're at a good calorie range for maintenance, and, your weight is holding, and you're feeling good, you have good mood, sleep, performance, etc. One thing to note is, we have to lean on all of these other things as well, and not just like, oh, am I hungry or am I full? Because like we talked about at the beginning, your hunger and satiety hormones are going to be a little bit dysregulated at the end of a diet, especially if it's a prolonged diet or if you've just been unintentionally under eating for a very long time.
Mm-hmm.
So we can't solely rely on your hormones, because you might not be full, but we might just need to keep doing the same intake for a while for you to get back to that homeostasis with how your hormones are signaling to you. Mm-hmm. So that's why we use that multifactorial approach as coaches to ask, okay, well, how did you sleep? How's your quality of life? Are you recovering from your lifts? Are you hydrated? What's your mood like, etc.? And then to go on with the point of, struggles with reverse dieting and struggles with getting your calories up. One of the biggest problems that I see, and this is a little bit of a side tangent, but it is so relevant to actually successfully reverse dieting, is clients complaining about, well, I just feel so full all the time. And like, one of the main things that I'll address is that, are you still trying to use diet foods? And if they say, no, I'm having rice, I'm having pasta, etc., then the next thing I will ask is spacing food throughout the day. So like you said, with protein, but not just protein. So what I will look at is, okay, well, how many total calories are in your breakfast? What about your lunch? Are you having any snacks between breakfast and lunch, or between lunch and dinner? Because what typically tends to happen is we set up our diet, right? And we have this routine that we're so used to sticking to. So maybe we have egg whites and some fruit for breakfast. And maybe we have, a nice little meal prep for lunch. But then when our calories go from 1,300 to 2,000 over the course of time, and we're still having a 200 calorie breakfast and lunch, then we're going to literally have, 3/4 of our day left when we get home from work or the gym late in the evening. So what are these people doing? They're shoving in 3/4 of their day's worth of food down their hatch at 9 p.m. at night. And so they go to bed feeling disgusting, wake up
Mm-hmm.
feeling full, and then they perpetuate the cycle because they're not hungry when they wake up.
And to add on that, that can actually I can never find the word. That can have a not so accurate reflection on the scale the next day.
Yes.
So they might think, oh my gosh, like my weight is up like 2 or 3 pounds this week. But if you're not conscious of when you're eating and when your food intake, so if you're increasing your food, but you're having more and more and more food at the end of the night, you might not see a true accurate number on the scale or what your average weight might be for that week. So paying attention to the timing of your food is, like Marissa said, is extremely important, but can affect the data that we see as coaches.
Yeah. And the word that I really like to use for that is artificially inflate.
I like that.
Because it's like, you know, you're eating 90% of your food intake at night. So what do you expect the scale to say the next morning?
Mm-hmm.
You still have 3 pounds of food sitting in your stomach. Like, yeah,
Right.
it's going to be inflated. But yeah, that's kind of like, I'll go over that with clients too. And they're like, oh, you're right. Like, I'm literally force feeding myself at night. And I'm like, well, okay, let's try having a more dense breakfast. Or like, have you ever thought about using whole eggs instead of egg whites? Or have you ever thought about actually eating a carb source, you know, not just fruit at breakfast, but like a bread or toast or something that you enjoy in that sense. And so
to build on that too, I think that another thing that's really important is with the increase in calories and the increase of food that you're now having, really prioritizing your pre and post workout meals. So that is really, really big. So making sure that you're consuming anywhere from 50 to even 75% of your daily carb intake before and after your workouts. So that way you are really putting to use the increase in food in what we want to do when we are reverse dieting, is to increase the amount of muscle and to put on that lean body mass. So this can really help as well if you feel like you're not able to get in all of that food intake. Maybe look to adding like an intra-workout carb source. So maybe you actually have a Gatorade, or you have some sort of, is it glucose powder?
Yeah, carb powder.
Yeah, carb powder. Maybe you have some intra-workout rice cakes or cereal or something like that. So those are really quick and easy ways to get in extra carbs. And it's hard sometimes when you've been in that dieting phase for a really long time to be okay with having like a sugary drink. That might feel very odd to you, but if you're able to get in extra calories and you're able to put them to good use, then by all means, like, go for it.
Yeah, and with that pre and post workout meal, you know, I think we could do a whole episode on how to really space that properly. But typically with clients, what I have them do is I call it the 25% rule. So I say try to get 25% of your carbs in your pre-workout meal and 25% of your daily carbs in your post-workout meal. And if you're doing that, then 50% of your daily intake of carbohydrate is going towards that peri-workout window. And maybe you can't stomach 50 carbs worth of, 25% of your carbs at your pre-workout meal sitting, an hour and a half before your training session, but maybe you keep a stack of rice cakes in your car and you're able to snack on 1 or 2 of those before you walk into the gym. Right. And so kind of using those convenient options. And, I'm always, when it comes to reverse dieting and just maintaining a higher calorie intake with clients, I'm constantly suggesting, quick and easy ways. Because I think a lot of times when we hire coaches or start this lifestyle, we kind of rule out the possibility of using fun food sources, right?
Mm-hmm.
We're like, oh, I can only have fruits, vegetables, and starchy carbohydrates from the produce section. And then I say something along the lines of, well, why don't you just have a bowl of cereal? And like their mind is just absolutely blown.
Yeah. And it's funny. I was actually talking with a friend right now who's going through a similar phase, and she's doing the same thing. Like, she's having those diet foods throughout the day, but even though she could fit in like, bread or cereal or things like that, she's still in the dieting mindset. So it's hard for her to switch over into, well, I'm kind of allowed to have these more fun foods, and she's finding that she's eating over her calorie goals because she's not, I don't want to use the word binging because that's not the right word, but she's not cheating either. I don't want to have
Just
the
over
wrong,
consuming.
just over consuming. Maybe she's just having an extra piece of bread, but it's going over her target numbers. But if she just worked it into her food, which she could do, it's just reverse dieting is just such a mental battle sometimes. It's just that switch from, okay, I don't need to be 100% perfect all the time, and I am allowed to have these more fun foods into my diet. And not, maybe not allowed either, but you just have the intake to do that now, and you can. It's okay. It's okay to have cereal for a pre-workout meal if if you don't want to eat oatmeal, or if you don't want to eat cream of rice, you can do that. You have the flexibility to do that now.
Yeah. So I think we've kind of already transitioned into just what does this higher calorie intake day-to-day life look like? What is maintaining? And so I really wanted to touch on the fact that maintenance, is a very, and I've had this conversation with a number of clients because it's such a tricky and murky area to kind of get into. But so let's say you're done with your reverse diet, your weight's holding steady, all of those signs and signals are in a good place. You're handling your calorie intake well, you're splitting up your food well, your hormones seem to be, regulated back to normal, everything's good. And, what does maintaining even mean? What does it look like? And I think that the goal of keeping the same and not changing is such an unmotivating goal to have. And so I find that when a client is done reverse dieting and they've transitioned into maintenance, there's this loss of a sense of purpose, because if you're dieting, you're working towards a goal. If you're reverse dieting, you're working towards a goal. If you're bulking, you're working towards a goal. So what the hell are you supposed to do if your goal is to maintain, to stay the same? That is inherently unmotivating. And so when it comes to maintenance, typically people want to go in one of two directions. They either want to really focus on just building lean body mass and continuing to improve their body composition, which technically I don't think should be categorized as just maintaining, because you're still improving. And that's what I kind of want to get into. Or it's the type of person who, once they have finished dieting and reverse dieting, that now they just want to be able to live this way. And they want to kind of get out of the numbers mindset and move into more of just I'm doing this as a lifestyle type of thing. And so it's one of those two directions. Those things can go hand in hand as well. But I like to think of maintaining as the colloquial term gaintaining, meaning you're gaining lean body mass and you're focusing on putting on muscle tissue at a maintenance calorie intake. And maybe that means your weight increases by half of a pound per month, but it's this slow increase in weight that is intentional to increase lean body mass without increasing fat mass proportionally. So that's something that I've been having conversations with clients, because it's just so hard to motivate someone to say, hey, let's stay the same and not change anything for the rest of this 6-month period. But if we set a goal to say, okay, let's be intentional and let's gain less than a pound per month, and really focus on channeling all of that gain towards lean body mass, towards muscle. What I see happen when we take this gaintaining mindset on is typically that person will end up heavier at the end of that, phase, whether it's 3 months, 6 months, 12 months, but they're going to look better because they spent all of that time putting on lean body mass and mitigating excess fat gain. So their body fat percentage is the same, but they're heavier, and that looks better. That looks shapelier, denser, more quote unquote toned when you're able to do that. And so this is something that I've really latched onto lately, because I just don't see the purpose or the motivation behind just maintaining.
Yeah, I love what you said about having new goals, because It's very easy when you're in a dieting phase that you see changes every single week. And that is so motivating. You see your like new low on the scale. I can see more lines in my, my shoulders. I'm starting to see my abs pop, and, my clothes are fitting better. And so it's very easy to keep that motivation and that momentum going forward. And so it's hard when now all of a sudden you're increasing your food intake. Maybe you start to see less lines. You're seeing the scale go up, and that can feel like you're moving in the wrong direction because you've been dieting for such a long phase. And that's why I think it is so important, even before you start a reverse dieting phase, is to pick out some things that you are excited for and that you can focus on, and some new goals to help with that transition to this new phase. And that is something that a lot of competitors will feel, as they feel kind of this post-show blues, where they're kind of in this depressed state of not having any goals. They have no motivation. They're feeling they have no overarching goal that they're reaching for. So it's really important to start thinking about, okay, what do I want to accomplish now? Maybe I can start focusing on things that are not physique based. So is there a certification that I've been wanting to get that I've been pushing off because I haven't been able to dedicate time to it? Is there a house project that I want to put towards? Is there something I can start focusing on in my career or at my job? All of those are really important to focus on in your life. And then when it comes to that physical aspect, focus on, maybe you want to hit a new PR in the gym. So you want to get your strength back. That should be something that you are looking towards when you're in the gym, because that's really, really going to help with that transition. And so maybe you're not focused on seeing the scale go down every week, but now you're looking for your numbers in the gym to go up. And so you're focusing on strength. You're focusing on, maybe there's a new movement that you want to get better at. Maybe you haven't been able to do, pull-ups. And so that's something that you now shift your attention to. So that is really, really important from a mental aspect, is how to continue seeing improvements, because you're not really going to be seeing them in the gym like you were before.
I think that raises some really, really important points. And it's actually something that we had a conversation about recently when you were making the decision to reverse diet.
Mm-hmm.
But dieting and our culture around dieting is so warped now that the only way that we perceive fitness is by getting leaner or losing body fat. And that is the definition for most people of success in terms of living a healthy lifestyle. But what we really, miss with that is that, the changes that we see in our body, they don't happen when we're dieting. Yes, we
Mm-hmm.
see body fat loss. Yes, we see more lines and more definition. But from dieting phase to dieting phase, and this is the most prevalent, I think, in competitors, because they're getting to those extreme levels of
Mm-hmm.
leanness, but even for lifestyle clients, because that is the majority of you guys probably listening. From dieting phase to dieting phase, the only way you're going to actually look different the next time that you diet is from the work that you put in when your body changes at maintenance. From
Mm-hmm.
the bodybuilding, that's where that word comes from, that happens at maintenance. And so, when we lose that sense of purpose, it's almost backwards. That the mindset that we have around dieting versus maintaining or putting on lean muscle mass, we put this glorified emphasis on the dieting phase itself, on the fat loss itself, and that's where we're motivated and we're working towards this change, when in reality the change that we're making is happening when our calories are high and our hormones are level, and our training performance is progressing. And that's when we actually make the changes in our physique that we see when we diet later on. And I think this year was, for me, the first time that I've actually experienced this like shift in paradigm of really being excited about growth,
Mm-hmm.
and really practicing what I preach in this area. So to give you an example of my timeline, I'm not going to count the first 3 weeks of the year because I was just an absolute asshole about eating and training. But once I started working with my coach at the end of January, timeline here is I spent 13 weeks dieting, and then I spent the next 27 weeks reversing shortly. Probably took like 3 or 4 weeks to get to a maintenance level of calories, and then spent the rest of that time in a growing, gain-taining phase. And I did put on 5 or so pounds in the next, in that 27-week period, so a little bit over 6 months. So it was a very slow and steady gain. I was able to add a lot of lean tissue, and my body fat percentage stayed relatively the same. Then spent 3 weeks in fat loss, and now I'm spending the next 6 weeks of the year, the final 6 weeks of the year, in a maintenance phase. And so one thing that you hear thrown around a lot is that you should spend, quote unquote, twice the amount of time in maintenance or a surplus as you do dieting. And this was the first year that I actually did that. I actually spent twice the time, like almost to a T, twice the time in a maintenance or surplus phase versus dieting. And I have truly seen how much of a benefit that can give you if you take the maintenance and the growth phase seriously, how much that can actually change your body. And then the final thing that I wanted to add on to what you said, Christina, is, not only setting goals to be motivated to put on lean tissue and shift that paradigm from, hey, what's actually important here is putting on the lean mass, not just the diet itself, but also adding goals, because now you're not spending 2 hours a day at the gym, right? And so
dieting, you're not tired all the time.
Yes, you have the energy and the resources and the time to actually devote to other areas of your life. Yes. And so it's important to realize that dieting by nature, again, is unsustainable. Mm-hmm. And so when we are dieting, we're sacrificing more time for the gym, more time for our cardio, for our meal prep. And that is, the phase where that's what we're focused on. But fitness as a lifestyle should not be that way, right? So when we are just maintaining, or we are, dialed back on the cardio, and maybe we're only going to the gym 4 to 5 times per week for 45 minutes to an hour, but we're putting in really hard work for that 45 minutes to an hour, that's when we can pour into other areas of our life. And that's when we're making the true changes. And as long as you're consistent with that, you can seriously make leaps and bounds of progress without killing yourself and feeling drained all the time, because dieting, again, is not the lifestyle. The lifestyle is the habits and just the consistency of training and enjoying the process. But yeah, that's kind of just what I wanted to end with and finish off with.
Yeah, I love that. And I think that you made a really good point. And just to continue to emphasize that your body changes happen at maintenance. And it's really hard, because when you're in that phase, you feel like nothing is really happening, or nothing is really changing, or it takes a longer time to see the effort that you're putting in the gym day in and day out. And so one of the things that's hard is dieting is sexy. Like you're seeing changes all the time, like we talked about before, and you're probably getting really good feedback from other people. And if you're a person in the fitness industry, you get a lot of very good feedback, and you probably get more client inquiries, and you get more people who are commenting and saying all these nice things, and you might see a higher engagement rate on your Instagram. And so it's really difficult to transition to being at like a quote unquote normal body fat level, or and you look like I don't want to say normal person, but you just have higher levels of body fat. That engagement drops off, and you might see less, client inquiries. And so it's difficult to stay in that phase, because you get that really good feedback. Or, maybe if you're a lifestyle client, you stop getting compliments from family members or from your coworkers. And so it's very easy to want to jump back into that dieting phase again, because that's where you get a lot of your positive encouragement and feedback. So it's hard to stay in maintenance. Or, you know, it's like, oh, well, the summer's coming up again, so I should probably start dieting so I can feel good and look good in a bikini. Or, you know, I have a wedding coming up that I'm a bridesmaid in and I want to look good in, or I'm going on vacation at the end of the year. So it's very difficult because we have a lot of instances where we want to diet and we want to diet all the time. And so like Marissa was saying, that you can't always be in that dieting phase because it is not something that you can maintain for long periods of time. And your body changes happen when you are in that maintenance mode. So it is difficult. It is very difficult, and it takes a lot of confidence in yourself to be able to stay in that phase, and not conscious or not consciously, but to not always be dieting and then reverse dieting for a couple weeks and then going back into that dieting phase, but to actually be able to stay in that maintenance mode and to stay in it for a prolonged period of time.
Yeah. And I think one way that I have kind of wrapped my head around looking at it for clients is, or just in general at society, you know, ultimately the reason why dieting is so addicting, it's like all these dopamine hits, you know, your pleasure neurotransmitter, that like when something good happens, you get a hit of dopamine in your brain, and that's addictive, right? Because that's what causes addiction with drugs. But you get dopamine release in your brain anytime something positive happens, and that's reinforcement that like physiologically actually changes your behaviors over time. Because if you do something to get that reward, you know, you're going to do it again and you're going to do it again. And that's how dieting can become addictive, because if you get those compliments, you're like, oh, this is good. You know, I feel good after that. I see these lines coming in on my arms or my legs. That's good. That's a dopamine hit right there. But one way to look at it is really just reframing the way that you view maintenance, the way that you view the day in and day out work. So,
Mm-hmm.
you know, learning to live at that energy balance, to live at maintenance, and get those dopamine hits from the day in and day out accomplishments that you can make. So getting in your training sessions for the week, actually fueling yourself to recover from your training sessions, hitting little PRs here and there on a day-to-day basis or week-to-week basis in your training, and just being consistent and learning to love the process. And I think once you can grasp that, okay, this isn't just about getting smaller and being leaner, but this is about the day in and day out work that I can derive pleasure from and reward from on a day-to-day basis, on a meal-to-meal basis, or training session to training session basis. That's when this becomes truly sustainable, and you're not going to be susceptible to constantly being pulled into wanting to diet again, because there's always going to be, like you said, those external forces or events or things that are going to pull us in that direction. But if you are committed to the process and to the day in and day out work of training and eating well, you know, that's when my paradigm shifted. And like I said, this is the first year that I've practiced what I've preached and truly understood it and enjoyed it. And it's because I take pleasure in getting in my lift each day, getting in my 5 lifts each week, getting in my stretching, making sure my meals are on point throughout the week, and, you know, practicing moderation and deriving pleasure from going out to eat, and not just saying screw it because it's my one chance to eat without tracking, you know, and deriving pleasure from the moderation and the sustainability of the process itself.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah, so I think that kind of wraps things up. So today we talked about reverse dieting. We hope that you guys have a very good understanding now of what a reverse diet is, when is the right time to reverse diet, how to go about a reverse diet and be able to manipulate your cardio and your macros to continue to see progress and get back up to a good maintenance phase, and expectations with reverse dieting, and how to transition into that maintenance phase when your weight does now start to hold steady, and what is maintaining and how long to be able to, well, I guess we kind of talked about how to maintain before cutting again. But generally your reverse dieting and your maintenance phase should be at least the same amount of time as you've been dieting, but generally more, if not double the amount of time, because like we just talked about, your body changes happen when you are at maintenance. So hopefully you guys have a much better understanding. If you have any questions or concerns, feel free to DM us on the either one of us or on the podcast page. But we hope you really enjoyed this episode and got a lot of good information out of it. And if you haven't already, make sure you're subscribed to our podcast. We would really appreciate it. And especially if you could leave us a rating and review on iTunes or whatever platform you're listening to this on. And really, also that really helps us is be able to share this episode with a friend, family member, coworker, someone who you think would really benefit from this information. And of course, you can find us both on Instagram. You can find me at Chrissy Lynn Fit and Marissa is at Marissa Roy Fitness. And of course, our podcast is at the Barbell Lifestyle Podcast. And thank you guys so much for listening. We really appreciate it. And we hope to see you guys back next week.
Alrighty.